That joke isn't funny anymore. Available on Amazon and everywhere. Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez podcast. I'm your host, Lou Perez, and I'm joined by economist, Professor Ááron Sepúlveda-Cué. And I hope I got that right. Aaron has a lot of accent marks in his name, which I respect. But as anybody listening, they're like, wait a minute, you pronounce your name Perez, which is a very anglicized way of saying it's supposed to be Perez. I know, I understand that. But Aaron, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me here, Lou. It's great to cooperate to do anything with you because you already appear on the Libertarian Christian Institute. I'm an economist and general editor of the Libertarian Christian Institute. And so it was great that you reached out to me, and it was great that you like my dad's post.
Yeah,
I do put them there because I think leadership and paternity are absolutely necessary in the libertarian movement and obviously everywhere else.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, I want you to take a minute and go to Aaron's Twitter page and check out the thread that he has about his dad, because a lot of kids growing up, you know, when they're on the playground, they talk about their dad being like a tough guy or like a superhero. Aaron's dad literally fought bulls. He was a bullfighter. And I mean, you just if you bring that up in conversation, at least the guys that I was friends with, I mean, you won already. I mean, there's nothing. What else? The closest I got, my dad's a butcher. You know, so it's like, okay, you know,
my dad was a butcher too.
He's a butcher too? No way. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, first story. Like, seriously, just get used to the stories, guys, because they're wild. My students enjoy them because I use them. Usually when I teach, I learn from some of my professors to try to introduce whatever concept you're teaching, try to introduce it with a story. Mm-hmm. So that you provide context. So it's not just demand increased, price went up. No. It's, oh, have you guys ever, purchased this, such and such? So just to give you guys a hint, and I'll go into details. One of the many stories I'm going to be telling you over this episode, just to give you a hint, is there was one time my dad was chased down in the Amazon rainforest by a local tribe. I won't expand more yet, but I will later. I promise you.
Yeah, so, let me take a note about that.
It wasn't just bulls, also tribal men in the Amazon island. So he fought a lot of stuff.
That's amazing. Are you a father yourself, Aaron?
Am I what?
Are you a dad? Do you have kids?
Oh, yeah. Well, I adopted my wife's my wife's son. But yeah, the main way I get my paternity my paternity duties out is with my nephews. I have a large extended family. My dad had 9 brothers and sisters. So out of the 10, I think 6 got married and had kids. And obviously, as good Mexicans as they are, Latinos, they also had a lot of kids. So I have at least 20 to 25 cousins that we see each other very often. So that is my, and we grew up together. For example, out of the 4 that didn't get married, those 4 uncles and aunts, I always have a hard time pronouncing the aunt, tias, tias and tios, uncles and aunts. Those 4 were integral part of the life of every single one of us, like all the cousins. Actually, my tia Tere, which my aunt Tere, she would be like the matriarch of the whole family. She was always there for us. She was kind of like the second mom to her brothers and sisters, and to her and to her nephews, and to the sons and daughters of their nephews. So that extension, that extended family. And I think this is something that Hayek, now, believe it or not, guys, the stories are going to be great, but I'm going to connect them with libertarian theory. I promise you that in economics. That our development, not just biological, obviously, but also culturally, is that you should have, when I told my students, you guys, because I teach a bunch of advanced students, you guys should have more kids. I have a friend that has 12. Just imagine my brain. Today, he has 12, by the way. And when I say should have more kids, I'm not really meaning you should have 12. I mean, in your context, let's say you don't want to have kids, you're not ready for it or whatever, that's fine. Because the duty that you should fulfill is to be an aid to your friends and family when they're raising their kids, because they're almost as if they were your kids. And actually, the function that, let's say, the single or the childless person, people in the extended family, it's to be, say, when there's a problem inside of the nuclear family, mom and dad, kids, or whatever, the extended family, single people, mainly my aunts and uncles, it was to come and mediate those problems. Why? Because it's an adult, but it's sufficiently close to the family so that we trust him, but it's sufficiently separated from the problem. So there's a huge function. If you choose to not have kids, trust me, there's nothing wrong. But do be mindful and try to help friends and family. Because the friends, I don't know if you guys do this, but for example, in Mexico, when a family is really close to another family and they're not biologically related, the natural thing to do is for the kids to start calling the adults in the other family uncles and aunts, tios and tias, because you get so close to your friends that they become part of your extended family. Okay, great. So take advantage of that and try to be a very active person. Leadership, that's what I'm talking about. Be a leader to someone that is just next to you. Kids, imagine if you want to talk about freedom and you want to talk about ideas of liberty, you want to, even if it's religious ideas, whatever ideas that you have, well, the most responsible thing to do is to help the younger generation to raise them in those ideas. And the ones that you have available is your kids and the kids of your friends and family, to help them out through experiences, through think about this, and you probably sort of hinted at that. The experiences I went through, my dad, I'm not talking about, let's say, advice. My dad was great, but every single advice I got from him, it was terrible. Just absolutely, it was absolutely terrible. But his actions, we could not. I'm talking about my mainly my cousins. Still today, still talking about the actions of my dad, how much they learned from my dad, not through what he said, but what they saw him do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Just to jump in, just as a dad, especially when when you have something that happens. I don't know if it's just like in the States, but a lot of times when you have kids, a lot of your friends who don't have kids, they don't understand just how much time it takes up raising your kids, and how in ways you're isolated. So one of the best things that you could do is if you can even offer once in a while to babysit the kids, and to allow the parents to go out to get even to get lunch for a few hours and then come back. It is such a huge weight, and it's such an easy just an easy thing that could be done. It's interesting with the uncle thing, because I have 4 brothers, and then I have a number of friends who have kind of fulfilled like an uncle role, but it's important for them to ask permission of me whether or not my kids can call him uncle. So so it's like, you got to run that by me, because it's not like everybody. So I remember there was when we were building our house, one of the main contractors, said, "Oh, you can call me Uncle Blank," and I was like, nope, that's not. I forget if I told it to him directly, but it's like, no, that's not who you are. You're not
from a stranger.
Yeah, from a stranger. Because he was around the house and all that. It's like,
no, you're not. Oh, okay. I think in the Mexican culture, which is where I come from, I'll ask my Argentinian friends if they do that, but it just naturally happens. Mainly in the north, we're very respectful of I don't know if you know anything about Mexico, but there's a big difference between northern culture, very conservative, and central and southern culture. In Mexico City, I'm very close to them, but okay, just my family's from the northern Mexico, Monterrey, if anybody knows, like Dallas with less AC units. That's what Monterrey is. It's the same thing, same culture. Some people still live some people still have ranch. On the weekends, they still go back and forth. Like the rural life and the city life are so interconnected that they're pretty much the same. And my friends from big cities like Mexico City, they would notice that going to a city was big, 5 million people is huge, but it still has a sense of how to say of a rural setting.
Culture.
Yeah. And so in the north, we always speak in English. You guys don't have it, where I guess it's ma'am and sir. We speak de usted, which is a different. You conjugate the words differently when you talk to someone that is older than you or some type of respect above you. when you get really close to an adult that you like a lot, you don't want to be disrespectful, and you start switching the conjugation to tú, which is very personal, right? So a way around that is that we start telling adults tíos and tías, uncles and even if they're not like, as long as they're close and we get along. So that's a little in between that I don't want to be disrespectful to you and switch my conjugation, but I like you so much that talking to you as usted is just so formal that makes no sense. So how do we fix that in between? We call them tíos or tías. It's a way to, how to say, and usually it is adults that are your friends, or the family.
Yeah. I've been to Mexico City before with my wife. My wife, she teaches Pilates and yoga, and she led a training in Mexico City. And it was our first time in Mexico City. And when we went there, I was actually fortunate because my father would go multiple times a year to Mexico City to visit Virgin of Guadalupe, like my dad.
Oh, okay.
So he would go to the main church in Mexico City, and he's friendly with this guy Miguel, who's a driver. So when we went to Mexico City, my wife and I, Miguel was there to be our driver, to take us around and all that, and we had just an amazing time. I was blown away by the food. Was just out of control, man. I was like, I was just really blown away. I hope to be able to get back to Mexico City soon. That would be great.
One story from my dad, so that to start warming things up. Just so you guys know, in northern Mexico, because it's more rural culture, I guess, there, for example, in Monterrey, which is the city my family's from, it's a big city, 1 million, 2 million back in the days. Today's 5 million people. It wasn't big enough, if you wish, to have like TV. You're a performer, so you know that. I'm sorry. Pretty much in the capital, everything that was related to show business, including bullfighting, everything was there. Even boxing. The Mexican boxing is big. Usually you have to. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
So the amateur circuit in boxing has to be insane, because before you even become a pro, you're fighting how many guys? So many guys you have to fight. It's
on a daily basis. Actually, just so you guys know that my dad grew, and this is part of the story. My dad grew up in if you go to Monterrey, will be the lowest, how to say, income neighborhood. And oddly enough, and you guys know that he made me grow up. My family, by the time I was born, my family was already like upper middle class. My dad did really good after bullfighting anyway. So we live a comfortable life, and he made me be raised in similar circumstances than him. First, because that will help us be close to our extended family, and it's great to have extended family, because just like something happens in your house and you need help, your extended family, like 12 people, you just cross the street and you have like 12 people that are your family to help you out. And on top of that, there's no way that I could appreciate what my parents give me unless I went through things similar to what my dad went through it. So he couldn't spoil me. My mom kind of spoiled me, but it's a little bit. Because if you spoil your kids, they would never understand the difficulties that you went through it. So you have to find ways to make them go through something similar than you, but still rewarding them with a little bit better consequences. And so my dad had that kind of like philosophy that we should be like very, even if you have money, you should be very bare on the way you dress, except for business. For example, for business, not for business, like very contextual. My family was well off, if you wish. But for example, I'm kidding you not, only my dad could have brand new clothing growing up, and my dad was doing well just for business. Just for business. All the rest of the clothing, secondhand clothing. But it says there's a bunch of cheap secondhand clothing of high quality in the like the informal markets that they open in Latin America. Most of you guys should be familiar with it. It's kind of fun that you get out and then there was a plaza or like a park, and then you come back to the park and the next day is packed with a bunch of little tents. Well, those tents are businesses. The market. They move from park to park in different days throughout the city, throughout the city. Well, all of those things, my dad wanted me to experience them, because then if he spoils me and takes me to, for example, I was glad enough that when I was a kid, my dad was able to afford to travel every year to the United States. That's why I was born in the States. We had a house in the United States. That's why I was born in the United States. Even go to Europe Okay, sure, but how do I appreciate going to Europe and it doesn't become like oh yeah, we just we went to the United States, who cares? No, I come back home and I know how people in the low income live, and my friends were low income, and we used to help them out informally, if you wish, like sometimes to help them out. I would invite my friends to eat at home. That way, their parents don't have to worry about how to say about feeding them one meal. Like those informal way. Okay, those experiences help me value what my parents were doing for me. And today I can say, like, you know what? I had an amazing childhood. My mom overprotected me. My brother over challenged me. He was an, oh, by the way, my dad was an MMA fighter in Mexico. Just so you guys don't know. I tend to make
so he fought. Okay, so we're gonna have to talk about your dad fought bulls, he fought men, and apparently he fought an entire tribe.
Okay, so there you go. No, that's my brother. My brother was since my dad couldn't do MMA, my brother was like,
your brother became MMA. Okay, yeah.
I make the joke that is that, well, my dad was a bullfighter, my brother was an MMA fighter, so I said I have to do something more dangerous than that, so I have to become an economist and a libertarian theorist. I took this route. So I had a great childhood, but one of the reasons why I can appreciate it is because I saw what my dad went through it, because I didn't go to expensive school. Like whatever local school, poor school was in the neighborhood, that's the one that I would go. He did not at all wanted me to go like a private school, preppy school kind of thing. Didn't want it. The only one where he offered us, it was when we made it to college. He kind of saw, well, yeah, you actually need like a high name, the label. He did offer my brother mainly to go to the private expensive school, but because he has such a high name, it's kind of worth it. My brother said no, and my dad didn't how to say insist. It's okay, you want to go to the public school, it's cheap, that's fine. You kind of were raised that way, and that's fine, no problem. By the time I made it to college, my dad wasn't wealthy anymore. And some of the stuff that we're going to be discussing and that you can kind of figure it out, my dad was nice enough. By the time I made it to college, so I'm the youngest one, my dad couldn't actually afford like an expensive school anymore. So I had to go to the public inexpensive one. And my dad literally said, I'm sorry, mijo. I'm sorry, mijo, that I cannot provide you with the education that I promised your brother. Your brother didn't want to. I wish I could give it to you. But right now, he says something like, I'm not the big businessman that I used to be. And I was like, you don't have to ask me forgiveness for absolutely anything. You already taught me everything I need to pull it out on my own. Because, and I hope this makes sense, libertarians should know social capital or cultural capital is actually many times more important than financial capital. You can have a lot of financial capital, but if you don't know what you're doing, you have no experiences, no family in the background to help you out, to protect you, a social infrastructure. That's what I call social capital. This comes just from a Nobel Prize winner, and a lot of work by the economics department of the George Mason University. Elinor Ostrom, if you guys ever heard of her, her big issue was that the state cannot create social capital. Local communities, neighborhoods mainly, right, can figure a way to share common resources, but the state cannot be involved. Maybe from the outside, why and how do that get developing? And she says, well, it's through social capital. So what do you mean by social capital? Those communities should have leadership and trust among themselves. And that way they can actually share common usually we say like, oh, we cannot share common resources because what belongs to everyone doesn't belong to anybody. We call it the tragedy of the commons, if you guys ever heard of that term. And she comes along and says, no. If there's social capital, that's not a problem in small communities. So what do you mean by that? She won a Nobel Prize because of this. So, well, yeah, if they're inherited traditional rules that people already kind of understand, that in certain community you shouldn't, let's say, usually things that we tend to share. Let's say like a pond. There's communities that have to share a pond. Okay, how much water should you get? Through tradition and through society, even without being explicit, and you're being pushed to not overuse the water. One of the best places to learn about how to share common resources, it's to hang out with people in the rural areas. For my city friends, I'm like, guys, you need to hang out as much as you can in the rural areas because they do things very differently. It's not uncommon. I remember some of the libertarian scholars in Spain, and then it's social capital, trust. There's trust within those communities that you're not going to overuse resources. The example they give a lot of the Spanish-speaking libertarian scholars is, for example, some of the ones that still today live in Miguel Angel Bastos. It's a great libertarian scholar from Spain. The example he was given, it was like, guys, of course we can share resources as long as there's social capital, trust, people know each other, because there's traditions and customs throughout history, or through a lot of years, people inherited those customs and those expectations that actually comes from Hayek too, by the way. That's ingrained in the libertarian thought.
I mean, you totally see that. It comes down to, like, I guess those social customs. It's like culture too. What people are bringing. Like there's some people who taking a shit on the street is a part of their culture, and you're walking by, you're like, what? I can't. How do I share a sidewalk with somebody who thinks that anytime they got to go to the bathroom, they just pull their pants down?
But if you don't have that custom, you don't have to worry about it.
Right. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So we can share them as long as they're social capital. You and I have about the same customs, and the way that we use the share, and this is the share resource, which will be like street. Usually that's the problem that we have with immigration. A lot of the battles. Why is it that some libertarians are more for closed borders, some for other open borders? And one of the discussions is, okay, what do we do with the common pool resources? That if you go, let's say, from a private place in Mexico City, you take like a helicopter, and just go and then get to a private place in the United States and then come back. Who cares? Doesn't matter. But when you're using when you're using streets, parks, and all that kind of stuff, well, there's other people using them too. And do you have exactly the same right? How do we handle that? What the point of Eleanor Ostrom and of Miguel Angel Bastos was saying, if you have common customs, you already know what to do. As you said it, well, it is a custom in my city. I live in South Texas. Here in South Texas, we don't go to the bathroom in public. Okay, so now we know that when we have shared areas, we expect for those areas to not have that kind of thing. Now, if in other cities like San Francisco, that's what they're used to it. I have.
Because it's so funny. You would, but with the stuff on with San Francisco, it's almost like, are we pretending that these people are used to it? Because anytime anybody points it out, it just seems like such a horror show. Like, it's just unreal. But something I want to get back to, and I just want to talk about, because of a culture, in particular where you were growing up, bullfighting. Right now. When I was in college, I studied a semester in Madrid, and I got to see a bullfight for the first time, a real bullfight. And there was a bunch that I had never watched a bullfight before in my life, and there were three. I found out that there are three kind of sportsmen or contestants. So you have the picador. I think that what his name was. He's the guy on a horse, and if you guys have never seen this, you have the horse, and there's a man on top with this huge stick with a spike on it, and he kind of goes out with the horse, and the bull comes and gores the horse in its side. And while he's doing that, this guy's stabbing the picador is picking this dude, picking the bull. And when I was there, we were told the horses were wearing kind of this almost like a blanket over the sides. And the reason why was that a lot of people were very offended by how gory it was to watch the bull put its horns through the horse. So instead they put a blanket over it so you wouldn't have to see it. But the problem is the horn still went through, and it still broke the horse's ribs and all that. So it was people
did it actually puncture the horse or just broke the?
I think it was it would just break the horse's ribs. So and I remember hearing that it was somehow more painful because at least with the blood the horse would bleed out, but with the broken ribs the horse would slow. I don't know. It was either way. It was it was something to behold. Yeah. So
it's tough.
So that's the first guy, and then the second guy is the bandoliera or something like that. The guy who goes with the spikes and runs.
Banderillero. Banderillista.
Bandoliero.
Those things
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
do.
So that guy, I had no idea that he was even a part of this. That guy is amazing because he's running out with nothing, and he has like these two spikes, and then goes, boom. And you hope that the last guy obviously is the matador, and the matador is hoping that both of these guys do a good job. So the bull is in the perfect condition to be able to kill.
Yeah, the reason why they have to do the picador thing is so because the toros de lidia, which will be bulls for lidia for bullfighting, they're very brave, they're very aggressive. The adrenaline levels in that kind of animal go through the roof in 5 seconds. And so what they do with that is when they puncture, it liberates blood, so it actually helps him see better because it's completely in range and the bull itself cannot properly see. But when you do that, boom, it liberates and actually can see, so it can actually go through and all that. Believe it or not, it actually helps him. It's just that the concern you told me is it's for the horse. Honestly, I never thought about the horse because it's supposed to be protected. And what you said that, like, I almost never in my life saw the horse actually get like puncture or even like hurt. I suppose they did the technique wrong because usually that's not supposed to, because they're protected, not just protected with a blanket, but it's a super thick one so that it doesn't puncture the horse. The other one could be that once in a while the bull is a little bit taller than usual, so when it hits the horse, it could be that the angle in which it hit, it was not something that we're ready for it, because sometimes it happens. Because sometimes you have some weird ones. Like there was one bull that it was like 200 pounds above the norm, so it was like and then we see him and he looked very similar to the other ones. Like, where's those 200 pounds extra coming from? That guy was very long, and because he was really long, it was very heavy, and that could be a problem. Maybe not for the horse, but when you actually the bullfighter, when you're actually passing with a muleta, that's the blanket, I guess, the red blanket, maybe the height that you actually finish the passing of the blanket, the muleta, you probably have to be careful when you bring it back because it's so long, you probably don't actually get to finish, and that could actually puncture and all that kind of stuff. So it's a very intricate art. We do call it an art, and I'm happy. Just so you guys understand Latino culture. In America, it doesn't happen, which is hilarious. But in Latino culture, actually, this happens. So you guys understand. For example, in the United States, because I know how high we see athletes, I make a joke to my students that are golf players, and baseball players too. So like, I have something for everybody. Dallas Cowboys fans, golf players, and baseball players always get something from me. So I tell the joke and I say, "Hey guys, okay, just fair. Whomever plays golf, who's playing golf? Do you guys want to hear my joke?" And like, yeah, sir, we want to hear your joke. Okay, cool. And I make the joke. Hey, why do you guys think that I tell all of my students to become golfers, right? That's what we call it, golfer, right? Golfers. And I say, why, sir? What do you recommend all your students? And I tell them, how else can you get an athletic scholarship without being an athlete? And then all of my golf players, sir, that's not fair. La, 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 la. Well, in Mexico, if you were to call my dad an athlete, he would smack you. I'm torero. Actually, back in the days, the reporting of bullfighting was done which makes sense, right? The sports commentators will be the ones reporting, right? And they used to say, oh, there comes a section, I guess, of sports news. And then they start talking about bullfighting. The bullfighters went to complain and says, this is not a sport, this is an art. Wow. Like in the United States, it wouldn't happen that way because athletes are seen like very highly. In Mexico, being an artist, I guess, or even a bullfighter, they said, no, we have to be in shape and all that. I said, but we're not athletes, we're artists. So from then they switched the section from sports news to sports and bullfighting news. They had to say bullfighting as if it was separate because they said that's not a sport. That's how picky they get. Here in States, if I say something that you're not an athlete, people just lose their minds. I say the same thing, by the way, guys, to baseball, because I don't like baseball. So you know.
Well, I'm just imagining like a golfer smacking you for saying that he's not an athlete. It just seems like completely,
Exactly, right? So think about how different the culture is. Like in Mexico, being an athlete, it's not that it's looked at bad. So you guys understand what's going on, which this would actually give you guys a very, how I grew up. For example, soccer players, actors, and singers, and maybe politicians if you wish. People, when they go to like restaurants and all that, people just go crazy and they don't even let them eat. And I mean, it's just kind of, they're very popular, right? My dad was famous, but was not popular. When we go to a restaurant, the masses wouldn't go in asking for a how to say
autograph.
For an autograph. It was singers, actors, politicians that would stand up and go ask my dad for a how to say
autograph. Yeah.
So I'm used to famous people looking up to my dad. That's how I grew up. Is whomever's famous, okay, yeah, they look up to my dad. That's how big he is.
How is one question is bullfighting still happening in Mexico?
Yeah. And much less than before. Much less.
Yeah,
but it is happening still.
How did your father get into that? Did he come from a family of bullfighters or
not at all? He was just a poor kid, the son of a family of 10. My grandpa, I didn't get to meet him because I'm kind of some of the youngest ones in my extended family. So I didn't get to. I only, out of my 4 grandparents, I only met one. My granddad from Monterrey, my dad's side, was a train worker. I don't know how you call it. The guys that drive. I don't even know how you call it.
Conductor.
Right?
Conductor.
He was like a conductor, and so he would go back and forth and all that kind of stuff. He would spend most of the time traveling because of that. The whole point is that the train station was really close to my dad's house. That's what they were living in that low income neighborhood and so on and so forth. It actually looks, and just so you guys understand Latino culture, this is not strange at all. All of my friends have a story like this. We know for sure that my dad has about 2 or 3 more brothers and sisters in Guadalajara and 2 or 3 more brothers and sisters in Mexico City. We know that, like literally, we know that, like for real.
Wherever the train stops, that's where he's got some. He got some cousins, some other brothers and sisters. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, my granddad was very, how to say, well, and my dad too. How to say, they were very active in the.
Very active. Yeah, I think the word active works. Yeah.
They were like they never ever needed an app to meet women. I promise you that. Like, it's just like. And then the other joke, my dad was amazing. He never pushed me to be a bullfighter. Obviously, his friends that look up to him, they were trying to push me to become a bullfighter. And you're not going to believe the main argument they had to convince me. Obviously, for me, it was like, whatever, right? They said, if you become a bullfighter, you're going to have every single woman in the world at your feet. And obviously, and I'm like, guys, I know they cook home. And my mom gets mad at my dad. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, it's not famous artists. I'm kidding you not. Famous artists would actually call home to talk to my dad. Very famous artists. Now, I'm not talking about like random order. So that kind of experience does change the way. Now, one of the reasons why probably you could say that I'm a libertarian, it had to do with my dad, since he has such a high social capital. One example that is fantastic, and I hope it makes sense to you guys. My dad never in his life paid a tax. Never. And when you would ask him why, and he said, "What for?" It wasn't like some type of like taxation is theft or some kind of long explanation or whatever. He said, "What for?" He didn't see like the point of doing paperwork when you can just be more productive and and use the extra resources and time. Like he never, like, everything was like phone numbers. He never wrote them down. He memorized them all. Business partners, everything. That's how good he was. And he was like, I don't have time for this. Literally.
Well, as far as paying taxes, I mean, was the Mexican equivalent of the IRS? I mean, what did they have to say? Like, oh, well, he's, you got to let him go. He's
you actually got it right. One of the reasons why I was born in the United States, you actually got that one. The way that my dad would make money, like, for just to keep it simple, guys, my dad was a bullfighter up to like 22, 23. He marries my mom, and then he, always doing, because he always like health food stuff. He's very like he was actually, I'm kidding you not, he was actually going to become a Buddhist monk. I'm kidding you, like for real. Like he was going to go to Japan and all that, among many stuff that he was going to do. Yeah, no, it's kind of cool, right? So as he was trying to do that kind of weird thing, he learned a lot of like health food stuff. So the way he built his business, and I was born a couple of years later, was go to California, buy health food stuff from Chinese people and Japanese people, then take them to Houston, where we had one of my aunts. It's how to say, lives in Houston. I was born there in one of those trips. So California to Houston. Houston, we will pass things through the border right now. It's, if you guys are familiar, the border where I live is McAllen and Reynosa. My dad was very famous in Reynosa, so he could cross anything he wanted from the United States to Mexico, and he paid zero taxes, import taxes, like the I forgot how I even flip them around.
Import, export, I forget.
Tariffs, tariffs, I think. He never paid those tariffs. He would literally pass by and say, "Hey, how you doing, guys? How you doing, Matador?" And then he just passed by and whatever. He always did that, and he was like, "Well, what for? Like, it just makes no sense." And this is I tell this fun story because in the libertarian movement, there was this, just so you guys know, with the Milei thing, if you guys have followed it or whatever, there were a lot of libertarians in Argentina criticizing Milei for being active, for trying and actually becoming a president, because they said it's because you're going to use the state to change things. And I usually tend to say, well, guess what? Things are not going to privatize themselves, okay? So you have to actually be in power so you can privatize stuff, and we can get closer to the libertarian ideal, right? So long story short, they were saying like, no, we should do agorism, like don't follow the rules that make no sense and all that. I honestly, even as a Christian that I am, I think bad rules should not be obeyed. I mean, we should be ready for that. But that makes sense to my dad. He has such a high social capital that he could give himself that kind of, how to say, luxury, if you wish.
He in a way, there was an episode of, there was a sitcom 30 Rock. And
30 Rock? Okay.
30 Rock, yeah. And it was a sitcom, it was a comedy. And one of the characters, I think he was a guest character, and it was the actor John Hamm from Mad Men. And John Hamm is a very attractive guy. Like he's been described, I think, I forget what's her name. She described him as like astronaut handsome. Like he looks like, that kind of a guy. And the whole episode was about him living in a bubble where his whole experience, because he's so good looking, people treat him differently. So there you go. There's a scene of him playing tennis, and he's terrible at tennis, and he's finally beaten, and he's like, I don't understand. Like I'm a pro. I don't have. I mean, so the whole idea is he's so good looking, people let him win. He gets away with all this stuff. So in a way, that's what your dad is. Your dad's like, I don't understand all this. I'm this huge star.
Who cares?
Who cares? Why would I ever do this? Yeah.
There you go. And you see, and I use this example because it's a little funny, as my dad has fun stories, but there's a lot of libertarian insights there if you actually pay attention. It says you cannot ask regular people to just avoid taxes just because they're unfair. Or you cannot ask people to like say nothing, like someone is misusing the park. And no, you shouldn't say that because that's the state owned and it was built with like theft money. So no, that's not owned by anybody. Like, are you for real? Like this idea is like there's a society that, for good or for evil, we have an infrastructure, not just infrastructure, physical but infrastructure of expectations. Hayek was huge. He says the law has more to do with the expectations that people build so that society can be functional. If I get out of my house, I expect for no one to park in my parkway so that I can get out.
Right.
What if people say, no, that's a public road, therefore you cannot complain because because it's the state and the state is evil and nobody owns it or whatever. And say, wait a minute, but how about expectations? I understand, the concern or whatever, but I need to get to work. For some of you guys that follow Argentine politics, a lot of people were complaining that the government of Milei was being really rough on protest. Okay, there was a lot of protests because he cut off. Just imagine, he cuts a bunch of government spending, bunch of subsidies. Obviously, the bureaucrats that were getting fired were gonna go complain like huge, right? And then, oh look, his government is suppressing protests, and it says, guys, the rule is very simple. You can protest all you want, but you cannot close the streets, because this happened. And this is why in Argentina, and you probably have a little bit of a sense what happened in Argentina. If anyone complained about too many protests, let's say in 2020 there were like a lot of protests, right? If I remember correctly.
What I experienced the times that I've been to Argentina is that they will protest like anytime, especially at the airport. Like the amount of flights that have been canceled just because they're going to go, they feel like going on and protesting. There was one trip I was stuck. My father and I, we were stuck in the airport. I think it was almost like 24 hours.
Yes,
and they just kept pushing our flight back until eventually it was canceled. And it was like, we could have had a whole day in Buenos Aires. We could have, it was really bad.
Sitting down. Okay, so imagine this: the entire city is like this. They literally just, I have a There are guys. There's guys that their livelihood, their job is to organize protests. Yeah, that's their job. That's how bad it was. So it gets really, really bad, and says, look, whatever you can complain about, what do we do with shared property like streets or parks or whatever, you cannot tell me that just because the state used taxes to build these roads, that literally anyone has the right to just close them for their protests. Right. And you as a regular citizen that have zero idea of ideology, your concern is to make it work, to make it back and forth to work, to feed your family. And what's the big issue? One of the reasons why he got elected, he promised no more cuts. Like, they're not going to close the streets anymore. Boom, bunch of votes. Well, it doesn't matter. He got elected so that protesters would protest. It's fine to protest. But people need to use the streets. They need to make it from one place to another. Regardless of your political views and ideas or whatever, imagine knowing that not one day of a month you can assure your employee and your customers that you're going to be on time. You cannot assure them, because at any moment they close the streets. That's it. You're doomed. You cannot make it to work. Like, I'm talking about such a basic needs. And as some people have said, precisely because political system in Argentina was so bad, it was like most people say, okay, let's give a chance to the libertarian. And I say, yes. So shouldn't we be taking advantage of that and just providing certain resources, certain ideas like, guys, don't cut the streets, don't close them. People need to use them. Something as something as simple as that. Okay, so going back a little bit to my dad, there's always a mixtures here and there. For you guys to understand the story of my dad, he didn't have any contact with bullfighting. He met someone like in a park. They were like practicing or whatever. He was 11. I thought he was 13, and then the youngest uncle said, no, he was 11. This is what happened to my dad. You guys understand what I mean? When he was 11, he wanted to become a bullfighter, but you couldn't really become a bullfighter unless you were really rich in Monterrey, because they don't have the infrastructure. You go to Mexico City, boom, it just opens up the opportunities like crazy compared to Monterrey back in the days. So when he's 11, he says he was working as a butcher. I mean, like an aide of a butcher in a meat market.
An apprentice kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Since he was 7. At the time 7, he was already working.
That's like my dad. Yeah, that's my dad, like 7, 8 years old. Yeah.
They were working. And in Argentina, it's even more so, because eating meat in northern Mexico since it's very rural, eating meat is a big deal. In Argentina, it's a big deal anywhere you are. It doesn't matter what the difference is everywhere. So he was an apprentice, and he says, I want to become a bullfighter. I know how to cut them. Now I need to wrestle them. 11 years old. Always remember this. So literally, he just leaves home, just gone. Didn't tell anyone. Nobody knew nothing about him until 2 years later. Okay, when he comes back at age 13, which was when I thought he was leaving, but no, it's actually my. They gave me the story a little bit more accurate. He comes back home 2 years after, when he's 13, and you're never gonna believe why he came back. Who sent him? His boss sent him back to Monterrey. His boss in Mexico City, so that he would open a meat shop, a meat market in Monterrey. He was that good.
He was that good. So this 12-year-old kid, 13-year-old kid?
11-year-old kid.
11-year-old
after
kid.
2 years, sends him back. So he opens a shop in Monterrey, because he knows people there. And well, you're already traveling. Can you try to do the same thing in Guadalajara, another city? So he went to Guadalajara at 13 years old. That's how good he was. After a couple of years, he finally becomes a bullfighter. He makes it big. Since he was not famous, I'm sorry. Well, he didn't come, as you kind of figured out, he didn't come from a family. Usually when you come from a family of bullfighters, you don't need that much, how to say, like promotion and trying to make
Right.
yourself available to. Most people already know you. So when my dad was young and nobody knew him, sorry for saying this, but you guys cannot deny my dad was very good looking. That's from the last picture.
You're looking at Ááron right now. Look at that. Yeah.
The what?
They're looking at your face right now. Of course you do.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I tend to make the jokes with my wife. To my wife, it was, she kind of made, and I don't know, when she finally met my dad, right? Like, we were getting together, and you can actually see her face looking at him, and then looks at me. And then I said, "You're looking at the future, right?" And says, "Yes." I said, "Okay. So should we? So it's a good idea to get married." So she said, "Yes." She was like, "Thank you very much." She was looking at us. So that looks like a good future, right? So my dad, he was very like, good looking guy with a lot of presence. The guy that took him under his wing was considered the most handsome, like more handsome. I can't remember the name of the guy, but his manager, the manager that got him under his wing, was considered so famous, and I'm not exaggerating. He was considered the most good-looking guy in Mexico, and he was the, how do you say amante? I always forget. Like he wasn't married, but he was dating, or he was like the lover, I guess, of I think Liz Taylor. That's how handsome the guy was. Like the famous American actresses.
Is it amante? Is that
amante? Yeah, kind of like she was cheating on whomever she was with or whatever, right? He was the Latin lover, literally.
He was the Latin lover.
My dad's manager was the Latin lover of famous American actresses. So my dad inherits all of the wisdom from from that guy, from his manager,
from the Latin lover. That's so funny.
Literally from the Latin lover. So and you can actually see him the way he dresses and acts. And my wife loves to talk about my dad because they get along really well. And she's an amazing impersonator of him. Like, she always starts this, when starts some joke that my dad said or whatever, she always starts like, because my dad, no matter what, everywhere he went, pecho, saca el pecho, saca el pecho, mete la panza.
Chest. Yes.
Exactly. How do you say that? When always walking by, if you guys see bullfighters when they get into the ring, the tempo and the stature and the position, my dad never stopped walking that way in his life. I'm getting here at home, like in flip flops and shorts or whatever, and say, hey, cooking some eggs with chorizo or whatever, and then you can see him like, oh yeah, Dad, can you please pass me the chorizo? And he's going for the chorizo, and he's going this way,
like in slow motion, the hero. Yeah.
So my wife always makes she starts like, and I said, stop it, it's too funny, because she's hilarious. How to say, imitating my dad, right? So he learns all that wisdom, if you wish. Another interesting story is that in order for him to be famous, because he didn't come from a family, there was an understanding that you have to make like a big deal before every corrida, which is every bullfight. You need to promote it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that my dad, at the beginning, when he was, say, 15 or 16, he wasn't all that well known by people people inside of the show business, I guess you want, bullfight business, they knew him really well, but people outside didn't know him really all that well. So if his name will come out at the beginning, it was like, who the heck is that guy, right? So he will come out with ways to get media to cover him before the bullfight, so that it will give promotion, right? So this happened right across where I live. I live in the McAllen area, if some of you guys are familiar. Reynosa is the Mexican city on the other side. The reason why I live here and I know this place really well is because my dad was very well known in that city. Well, the way he became well known in Reynosa specifically was because the business person that was gonna organize the bullfight in Reynosa at one time told him, look, we need to promote it some way, somehow. We need to figure out a way to make a big splash on media. What do you think we should do? This is what my dad did. He pretended that the businessman didn't want him to bullfight. Didn't want him to bullfight. So he went into, help me with this one. When you don't eat, how do you fast?
Hunger strike. Yeah.
Hunger strike. There you go. In Spanish, we call it fast, like ayuno, but actually, he went into a hunger strike in the main plaza of Reynosa to draw attention to himself, literally yelling out, "No, I need an opportunity. I'm going to be the best bullfighter in history, whatever." And then the businessman will come and say, "No, you're too wild," because he was really wild, right? "You're too wild. We don't want those kind of things here." And, acting it out and all that kind of stuff. And then at night, when nobody was there, his friends would come with food so that he wouldn't. And he worked, and therefore, as he was making a big deal, then radio came along. Radio was a big deal back then. And then the newspapers came along. And then within a week, like, "Oh, yeah, sure, I'll give you an opportunity." And then the following week, when the bullfight was there, boom, pack. Large portion because they knew him, and another portion, they just wanted to know what's going on with bullfighting because there was some crazy guy yelling and screaming in, in the park.
So your dad retired around 23?
20, yes, exactly. You said
because I told you when I saw my first bullfight, my first and only bullfight in Spain. At the time, I was reading a book by Ernest Hemingway, who he was such a big fan of bullfighting. He wrote a whole book called "Death in the Afternoon," and in it he writes about there was a guy, I think it was Sidney Franklin, who was an American who was a bullfighter, one of the few American bullfighters, and you're
gonna make me cry. I did not know that. This is the coolest thing ever. You have no clue what you just did.
Oh, wow.
This is like, because an American writing about bullfighting for me is like beyond belief. Like literally,
it's pretty amazing. And he talks about obviously how dangerous it was. But he said I think at the time, and this is I think in the 1920s and 30s, he said the main killer of bullfighters was syphilis. Because that was the number one killer. So if you make it through, if you make it through, the bull, you still have all that to do. So your dad was a matador, right?
He was. We call it novillero when you start because you start with the small bulls. That's going to be important later on, and then become a matador. When you say matador and not novillero, means that you have the big ones, the ones that are like, I don't even know how many pounds. How many would we say? There was one that was 600 kilograms.
Oh, yeah. Easily 1,200 pounds. So, it's humongous, those things.
Yeah. Like, this is not common, but they're usually below. Okay, like the maximum we have seen is 1,323 pounds. 1,322 pounds. The norm would be, let's say, 520, which would be like 100, like 1,100. Somewhere around there. That's like the norm. So when you get those big ones, they call you matador. They don't call you novillero anymore. So it's like a little process that you have to go through with small ones, and then later with with the big ones. Novillero first, and matador after.
Yeah, because we were just running up on time.
I'm sorry.
But no. I mean, your dad has an epic story. I mean,
we can continue doing this. So it's like we have the eternity to talk about this stuff. So
that's true. You mentioned at the beginning something about a tribe and your dad being chased by a tribe.
I have to tell the story.
Can we talk about that?
So the story, and actually I was kind of going through because it's a little process, right? He becomes like a novillero, if I remember correctly, when he was 16, and that's where I actually posted a picture of him being 16 or 17, and where he's kneeling. And he's actually fighting the bull, but kneeling down, not standing up, with the horn passing by his face.
By his face. Wow.
Not by his by his. Usually they hit you in your legs, right? No. He was putting his face next to the horn when he was 16 or 17, somewhere around there. So he does that and all that kind of stuff. He becomes a bullfighter, but the problem was that, I think when he was 18 or 19, 18, I think, somewhere around there, he was so wild. He was I mean, matadors are wild, right? He was the wildest, straight out. Simple as that. There was one bullfighter that was kind of like a preppy kind of guy. He grew up in a wealthy family and all that kind of stuff. And my dad started trashing him in public. The preppy matador came after him and says, "What the heck are you talking about? Whatever." And then they grab the preppy guy, the preppy matador grabs him by the hair, just kind of like being mad, like the guy doesn't know how to fight. And my dad laughs and says, "You don't know how to fight, right?" The guy doesn't know what to do, and then my dad just like, boom, in a restaurant, in front of a lot of people, and says, "Dude, you're stupid. That's why I talk bad about you." Like in these shows. So long story short, so he was so wild because some other matadors were kind of like coming from like preppy areas, and my dad didn't come from a preppy area, right? So he was so wild that he got punctured, cornado, very heavily on his left thigh, to the point that he couldn't even he could walk for like 4 years, but a little bit like with a limp and all that kind of stuff. It took him so he truly couldn't fight during those 4 years or 3 years, somewhere around there. So he goes into kind of like a spiritual kind of thing going on. He didn't know what to do with his life. So he wants to join, or he wants to learn something about Buddhism. And he didn't know anybody in Mexico City, because that's when he spent his time in Mexico City. How could he find someone that would teach him about Buddhism and all that kind of stuff? He couldn't find anybody in Mexico City. So him and his best friend, Lacho, who was an actor, actually, he was somewhat famous in Mexico. They get together and say, "We need to go to the Amazon rainforest. I think there's like a Buddhist kind of guy over there in the middle of nowhere where we can learn." Yeah, exactly. You see what I'm talking about, right? So they leave to the Amazon rainforest, like just two guys in his 19s or 20s. They just leave. And I don't know how the heck they made it all the way there. They couldn't find anyone. They were chased down. Literally, what happened when they make it over there, I don't know how they got a translator. And then they were looking for someone that would know about Buddhism in the Amazon rainforest. Give me a break. They find a tribe, and then the translator says, "Hey, you know what? The boss of this tribe says that he has never seen a man's chest with hair. So you and I will be in danger, sir."
Very dangerous. Very
and the chief, the chief of the tribe wants to hunt you so that he can keep your chest as a, how to say it? Is it a prize, or how do you call it? Like
a prize. Yeah.
Like a little bit of reward, right? You should see my
like oh god, I'm trying to think, like the cuero, right? Like the skin, like
exactly. A human skin with hair in the chest. They didn't have that over there, right? So they had to fly away. They found a way to run away and all that kind of stuff. They come back to Mexico City, and this is not an exaggeration. Someone told me, because Mexico City is so big, there was a Buddhist teacher or whatever 3 blocks away.
Of course.
He could. And that story is actually very important, because I learned as I was growing up, because I would spend time in Mexico City. My dad's life as a bullfighter happened in Mexico City, and my mom's from Mexico City. That's where they met, right? So I would go to Mexico City very often, and my uncles from Mexico City would tell me the cool thing about Mexico City is that it's so big, you can really have 2 or 3 different lives in every single not neighborhood, in every single street. You just move to the next one. You could literally be dating 3 girls in the same neighborhood, and they would never see you.
A different was it Cuadra?
Yeah. There you go. It's a block, right? Just move blocks. People don't know each other because there's just so many. I mean, New York is kind of like that. I mean, just imagine, right? You can actually like and we also used to make jokes. This actually happened to him. They actually found a guy. The guy was actually pretty good. This is where, besides teaching him like religion and spirituality and all that kind of stuff, they taught him how to make money out of selling health food. Like he would teach him how to prepare healthy food and all that kind of stuff. And so as he was doing that, those 4 years he couldn't bullfight, he started his business, and he was using his fame and his fame to actually open doors here, open doors there, so on and so. Let me go to the United States, back and forth, and all that kind of. He knew how to use his social capital really well, and I forgot what, there was one nice story that was related. I'll tell you later if we come back. But okay, so the point of of all these stories is, and I hope this makes sense to you guys, because usually I try to step this way, to explain it this way. I've been blessed, and I remember that there was a little story that I said that I was I'm the happiest man alive, because that man many times told me, I'm proud of you. And just remembering that guy said that to me many times is like, and if I try, don't tell anyone.
No. Well, I was gonna. I think a good way to bring it all together is like the first time that I came across this thread. It was on Father's Day, and
yes.
you had shared this incredible story about this man that, and you should probably know this about your dad. Obviously, the incredible impact he's had on you. How amazing it feels to have a man like that say that that he's proud of you. But then also, what those stories mean for a stranger. An extranjero. Like, I'm hearing these stories and I'm like, wow, this is an incredible. I can't believe this human being existed. So in a way, it's sort of like the teachings of your father and the legacy of that continues.
The legacy,
it continues to move on, not just with you, but also the stories.
Yeah, and for example, I tell everyone, my dad was terrible. Like, the advices he would give you, they were terrible. Yeah, you ask him a question and he would answer a bunch of. Because my dad was a doer, he was not a talker. I mean, talk by like making fun of people, like that was hilarious. Because just hanging out with him was fun, because he was really good about making fun of others. And the things he will come out with, it was like, dude, this is just amazing. Like, just amazing to hang out with him, right? And the story that I was telling you guys is, and that's why that thread that you face, and I appreciate that you that you shared that thread, the Father's Day. It was when I came out live. I come out on TV very often because of the economics thing, and I can speak both languages, and I'm somewhat fluid in explaining things and all that. So Telemundo tends to use me a lot locally, and since they already know me well in other cities, like I've come out on Orlando, San Antonio, and San Francisco, by the way, New York too. Sometimes they have asked me questions, and I have come out on Telemundo. This one was special. That time that I shared that story was 2019. Was special because Trump came to the Valley, to South Texas, talk about the border and all that kind of stuff, and they needed someone to make comments about whatever it is, but some knowledgeable person about the economy, about politics, or whatever. And they asked me, "Can you please stay with us?" We stayed like 4 hours. Whenever Trump was resting or doing nothing, they would go into me and talk about like debt tariffs, like whatever topics that you can imagine, right? Mm-hmm. And it was live. It was probably the most important appearance that I have come out on TV. For the first time in my life, I got a little bit nervous. I never get nervous because my family is like that. We just talk and talk. For the first time in my life, I felt like just a little bit. All I did was close my eyes. I imagined my dad bullfighting, and I said, "My dad did that. This is nothing. Yeah, I can do it. Boom, move on." And when I criticize other people's lives, I always try to take that into consideration, because you need to see yourself arriving at that. I hope this makes sense to you guys. Some of those fans that like soccer or international soccer really well, I learned there's a lot of insight in the Argentinian context in soccer that have to do with how important is the history of your family. Long story short, in the 90s, as some of you guys know, Colombia, the team from Colombia, have never won a World Cup, but they were playing amazing. 94, 93, somewhere around there. So it's not a big deal. They were playing, everyone said they're going to win the World Cup. One of the most important soccer coaches, Arrigo Sacchi, literally told them, "I don't think you guys are going to win." He says, "Why? We're playing amazing." He says, "Because you guys don't have history. You guys cannot see yourself. You guys have to change it. I mean, I'm not against it." He said, "But just be ready. Since you guys don't have a history, you guys cannot see yourself being there. So I hope you guys are successful and the future generations could see themselves on you guys. But you guys are going to have it really hard. Being the first one, it's harder than being the second one, because the second ones, they just picture themselves. Hey, this is perfectly possible." So I have the advantage. A lot of people didn't have my dad. So whenever I try to criticize other people's decisions, like a lot of this stuff on the woke and all that kind of stuff, I'm pretty sure that the reason why these things go viral is because there's way too many people, even young people, that have a very bad relationship with their dad. So they don't have the cultural and emotional infrastructure that I have. I can solve a lot of problems. Remember when I told you my dad was saying, mijito, mijo, sorry that I cannot pay you like the expensive school. And I was like, you already taught me everything I need. Like, you taught me how to survive with my mouth and my personality. Because that's what you did. You survive not with resources. You survive with your mouth and your personality. So I can do the same thing. Don't worry that. Because I know that he did it. My cousins know that. Actually, they tell me stories like the oldest ones. My oldest cousin, as soon as we were getting cousins, my dad would start actually giving them jobs so they will help him, because that's the used to, like, hey, just get the young guys as soon as possible to do business and all that kind of stuff. So whenever he was gonna do something where my cousins could go, he would actually take them over there. And they saw my dad going to a store and say, hey guys, you owe me such and such and such. And my cousin Tito, that's what we call him, says that when the store owner told my dad, sorry, I cannot pay you such and such, okay, I'm gonna take the inventory. Jumps, takes the inventory and says, Tito, my cousin, go grab such and such and such. And my cousin Tito was like, that's it? They're not paying us. And my dad says, when you pay me back, I'll give you back the inventory. That's my inventory. You haven't paid me. He says that experience completely changed the life of Tito. Having assurance in life. So, no, that's wrong, and I'm going to fix it. And it's perfectly fair that I'm what I'm doing. It has nothing to do with words. It was the action of my dad. You see what I'm saying? He didn't have to get, when you face this stuff, such and such and such. And although I speak a lot when I'm with my nephews, I try to not talk too much. Because I think if you talk too much, you confuse them, because they're kids, they still don't have the verbal skills fully developed. So if you talk too much, you might confuse them. But with your actions, they can see your personality. And 80% of that's why online communication is very difficult, and nobody wants to acknowledge it. We don't have non-verbal communication.
The body language.
If it wasn't for the emojis, we would be worse. I'm kidding you not. I'm kidding you not. And it was something silly, like I think most of you guys know that well, everyone except Americans, everyone use WhatsApp. It's like a big deal using WhatsApp everywhere else, everywhere except the United States. I don't know about Canada, but you guys get the idea. So it was something like in one of the groups, they did like a business group for some business, some projects, very specific, just to give directions. And as they were talking to each other.
Sorry, Aaron, let's go. I have to wrap this up because my wife has to giggle. I'm sorry.
Emojis help a lot, even businesses, to communicate. There you go.
Emojis help a lot, even businesses. Aaron, I wish we could talk for longer.
We can do it again.
Let's do it again. Thank you so much for joining me, and thanks for talking about your dad. So
thank you for having me to talk about my dad.